always wanted one. Okay, Mark.
A reminder to Sonia, I do want last Monday's recording and I do want this today's recording, so I will want both of those so I can post them on our YouTube channel.
Brother Mark, you have access. I
Oh, I do?
gave you access. Yes, you do.
Okay. All right. I'll have to look at see where that's at. Okay, I'll look back. Was it an email?
It would have sent you an email when I
Okay.
sent the emails out, so it'll be in there somewhere, and it'll be under kahaltx at
Perfect.
gmail.com.
Okay, thank you.
And before you start, hang on one second. By the way, Sonia sent the original email out around January 4th, if that helps you find it. And then what we're doing is recording these. The full audio and video goes on a private site that is not available to the public. That's the recording that everybody needs access to join. That protects everyone because some of our people are in Canada or someplace where they have to be very careful of appearing in a group like this. So if anybody is concerned about being part of this, the public site will not have the recording or the chat. It will only have the audio. So if anybody is concerned, don't speak, put your questions or comments in the chat and you will be fully protected, okay? So I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead.
No, that's all good. I am going to share my screen, so hopefully you've given me sharing permission.
Okay, I'm gonna take
If
1
you
minute to figure out what I'm doing.
click on the share button, and that will say permit sharing to everyone. I think is what it says.
Well, I wish it did. It doesn't. Hang on. I think on this one, I have to do it by participants. Almost there. Oh, goodness. Oh, thank you. I will allow that. There you go. Okay.
Okay, there it is. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see this. Yes?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to read some, at first, I want to read some of the text that help define the days that, and I'm interested in, I don't know, 9 years ago, I've been praying since then for the Father to show me and help me see what was being done in the first century, because it connects the Tanakh and the New Testament, what they were doing at the Apostles' Day, Yeshua's Day. This really helps because it's connecting any and everybody. And so this text here is from I believe it's from the Babylonian Talmud. And so it says, for people who are distant from Jerusalem, it is permitted from noontime and thereafter on the 16th of Nisan. Now, lo, the prohibition of eating new produce prior to the offering of the first sheaf of barley on the 16th of Nisan. So they're telling you here in this text that in the day of the first century, they were offering the barley on the 16th of the month. All right. And then you'll see here in B and C, the 16th of Nisan coincides. If the 16th of Nisan coincides with the Sabbath, they are to be burned on the 17th. Now, the reason that stood out to me is because people will say it has to be on the same days. Like the Zadok calendar says, no, it's always on the same day, but they're telling you here that sometimes the 16th falls on a Shabbat, sometimes it doesn't, which means it's fluctuating, just like it does for us, whether you're on a sliver or on the conjunction. It can be different year to year. They're telling you that here in this text, that it was shifting. And this is what was going on in the first century. This is how, and I really want to focus in on Acts chapter 2, the Holy Spirit is falling in Acts chapter 2, and 11 nations have come based on what they've declared from Jerusalem. And this is what everybody understood. So these are some important texts for us to see. And then also here in Philo, in Laws 172, he says, the loaves are placed on the seventh day on the sacred table, being equal in number to the months of the year, 12 loaves arranged in 2 rows of 6 each, in accordance with the arrangement of the equinoxes. There are 2 equinoxes every year, the vernal and the autumnal, which are each reckoned by periods of 6 months. At the vernal equinox, all seeds are sown in the ground, begin to ripen, about which time also the trees begin to forth their fruit. And by the autumnal one, the fruit of the trees has arrived at a perfect ripeness. And at this period again is the beginning of seed time. Again, very important information to see that it has to be the sun crossing the equator that warms everything up, that causes everything to start blooming. It brings everything into order. And then on Philo here on 189, he says, on the 15th day at full moon, the feast, which is called the Feast of Booths, is celebrated, for which the supplies of the sacrifices are more numerous. So he's telling us here that on the full moon, on the 15th day, is when Booths is beginning to be celebrated. So again, this would not be a dark moon on the 15th day, a full moon. And then Philo also says the same thing in Laws 2:155. And this feast is begun on the 15th day of the month, in the middle of the month, on the day which the moon is full of light. And he says the same thing here in 2:10. And then we have, I think this is Josephus in Antiquities 2:48. And I'm so thankful that Cyrus has reminded us that Josephus is a son of the priests. And so he understands the priestly order and what goes on in the temple. And so I would like for, before I read this, if Cyrus would read this for me. And I want everyone to know that when I read this, and then 10 minutes later, I got an email from Sonia. And I told Sonia, I said, I just read something 10 minutes ago that I can't, it's so amazing. But this is, I was telling people that this is, I don't know, you can say a smoking gun, or you can say whatever you want to say, but there is something significantly said in this text. And again, this is a son of the priests, and I want Cyrus to read it, and I want to get everyone's opinion.
It's analog, okay? Is that book 3? Book 3,
Antiquities 2:48, yeah, 3:10:5.
okay. 3. Ten. And you said 5?
Yes.
Okay. In the month of, excuse me, in the month of Xanthicus, which is by us called Nisan, and is the beginning of our year and the 14th day of the lunar month, when the sun is in Aries. For in this month, it was the sun in Aries. Oh, no. For in this month, it was that we were delivered from the bondage under the Egyptians, and the law ordained that we should every year slay the sacrifice, which I have before told you we slew when we came out of Egypt, and which was called Passover. And so, do we celebrate the Passover in companies, leaving nothing of what we sacrificed till the day following?
Yes.
The feast of unleavened bread succeeds that of the Passover. and falls on the 15th day of the month and continues 7 days, wherein they feed on unleavened bread.
Okay.
On what?
So in this passage you just read, what is standing out? What is the just unbelievable?
You underlined them, right?
Yeah, I shouldn't have done that. I wish
But it did stand out. It did.
Because the Aries is the goat. It's
yes. No, Aries is the ram.
yeah,
Ram. Yeah.
the sheepy thing. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So
My
he's
God.
telling you two things. Number one, it's a lunar month, which there are those that say they don't go by the moon, so it's a lunar month. And when I saw the word Aries, I couldn't believe it, because what happened here is he is telling you this is a timestamp. This is like having it's like him telling you an eclipse happened over Israel, which we can go back and find out what day that was, because we can look at eclipses. And so this is a timestamp that nails down the calendar for first century people in Israel. And everyone else that's coming to the land to celebrate Shavuot, it's nailing this down. And I'm going to show you that here in 1 second. So it's like, I was telling people the smoking gun, but it's just, I don't know, when you have the sun in Aries, this only happens 1 month out of 12 months. Only 1 month. And I'll show you that here in just a second. All right, and then Philo says in Creation 1:16, and the sun, the ruler of the day, making 2 equinoxes every year, both in the spring and autumn. The spring equinox is in the constellation of, what does he say?
Aries.
Aries. The spring equinox is in the constellation of Aries. Now, it's not there now because we have the precession of the equinoxes. But for them in that day, it was in Aries. Another timestamp that's also confirming what Josephus is saying. And then again, in Antiquities, they're saying, I think I had this up there already. Let's see here. All right, so this is important because people will say it has to be 3 24-hour periods for 3 days and 3 nights. This is in the Babylonian Talmud. It says, Rabina said, it refers to Judah, but with regard to taking root, we say part of the day is tantamount to all of it. But for 2 times, we do not invoke the argument that part of the day is tantamount for the whole of it. If he weeds sometime on the 14th, we would have to count the rest of the day as a complete day. And also the beginning of the 16th would have to be counted as another complete day. They're telling you here that in their mindset in first century, that it's not, when they say 2 or 3 days, they're not saying 24-hour periods. If it's even a partial part of the day, they're including the whole day in the count. And hopefully everybody can see that what's being said here. And this is, the reason this is important is we're looking into the mindset, even though it's the Talmud, the mindset of the people in the day of how they understood timing and reckoning. So it's a very, very important piece of literature.
Brother Mark, can I just stop you there? Because there's some questions in the chat. And just to, because like that, the Aries, the sun is in Aries on the 14th day, it just blows my mind. And to explain the significance of this to Summer and Randy, if I'm getting it right. So on the 10th day, the sheep or the ram or whatever is kept, the lamb, which the lamb has to be a year old, right? So it can be a ram. Well, it has to be a male, right? So anyway, it's kept on the 10th, and on the 14th day is when Passover happens. So the lamb is sacrificed. The fact that the sun is in Aries, the ram, on the 14th day of Nisan, which is Aviv, right? Have I got this right?
Yes.
Then this is like nailing. And if it's only happening once every year, I'm guessing that's what you're also telling me. It happens every single year. that the
Yes.
sun is in Aries on the 14th day. I mean, what are the chances that the sun is in Aries on the 14th day when the lamb is sacrificed? I mean, I've actually got literal goosebumps and it's a hot day.
Yes. And what's also amazing is it completely I gotta watch how I say things. It completely shows that in Israel, everyone is keeping things based on this reckoning, and there wouldn't be a Passover the month before or the month after. They're saying that only when the sun is in Aries were they celebrating the Passover. And I'm going to show you that that can only happen one 30-day period in the whole year. Only one.
Can you tell me how we know when the sun is in a constellation without our modern technology?
I'm going to show you that in a minute.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Were there any other questions or should I move on?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go for it. That's awesome.
All right. And so here's Laws 241. It says, now there are 10 festivals in number as the law sets them down. The first is that which anyone will perhaps be astonished to hear called a festival. This festival is every day. The second festival is the seventh day, which the Hebrews in their native language call the Shabbat. The third is that which comes after the conjunction, which happens on the day of the
New moon.
each month. So this is correct because the conjunction is when you don't see it. And if you remember, I was telling you, you look each morning, you see it, then you don't see it. That's conjunction. That evening, you declare Rosh Chodesh, which is after the conjunction. Yeah. So that's another important piece of text, and that was from Philo. And Josephus says they left Egypt in the month of Xanthicus on the 15th day of the lunar month. And then he says, upon the 15th day of the same month, when the season of the year is changing for winter, the law enjoins us to pitch tabernacles in every one of our houses so that we preserve ourselves from the cold of that time of the year, which is great because it ties into what Cyrus was telling us that about the oil, that if you're keeping it too early, then it doesn't match with what Josephus is telling us here, that there is a changing from one season to the other, and it's basically summer to winter, and then winter to summer in the spring, and that's what's happening here. And he's talking about it getting cold. So if you're celebrating it in August, you're not getting, well, I'll leave it at that. And the last thing I'd put up here before we go to the STAR program is, again, I had shown this on one of the other meetings that we had, and I just wanted to point out that when you have a red blood moon, which happens on this calendar here on the 15th, and you back up 15 days, you always come to the 0, which is when you cannot see the moon. You'll never be at, which the number 2 is, 2.6. You just won't ever work. A red blood moon nails the full moon. So if you back 15 days up from the red blood moon, it always brings you to the conjunction at 0. And so just a point again that I wanted to point out. So I'm going to change the slides, and I'm going to bring up the heavens here. Okay, can everyone see this?
Got it.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Up in the top left corner, you'll see that it's February 28th, 32 CE, Yeshua's days, right? Notice that's Jerusalem, Israel is the viewpoint that we're looking at. We're looking at the heavens from Jerusalem so that everybody understands this is, I'm trying to mimic everything I can to the day that the apostles and Yeshua was walking on the earth. And we want to see what Philo and Josephus are telling us about Aries. So this is February 28th. Can everyone see the moon here?
No.
Okay, so the moon is right here, but it's almost black. And I'm going to zoom in here because you're going to see that the moon is in a sliver. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So there's a sliver on the moon, which means more than likely they would have seen it that day. But we can't count this as the first month because the moon is in,
Pisces.
I'm sorry, the sun is in Pisces, not
Pisces.
Aries.
Right,
So
right.
we have to now pass the moon's going to pass the sun because it's in Pisces. And we're going to go another 30 days here. I'm just going to keep advancing through the constellations. The moon is moving its way. And we're going to now come back over towards, oh my goodness, look where the sun is. The sun has moved into the Ram.
Damn, how about that?
Imagine that. And so now we're going to go
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Oh my goodness. Where is the moon on the 14th of the first month?
In the barley.
Oh my goodness. Now I'm not going to change the moon, but I'm going to move this over to show you where the sun is. It's in Aries, the Ram.
Aries. Look at that.
Mind blown.
Now I'm going to go back over here and we're going to center on the moon again. And we're going to advance it to just to show you that the sun is out of Aries at the next conjunction. Here we come forward, forward, forward. Now we're coming to the end of April. Oh my goodness, the sun has moved into the bull.
Oh,
So we see that when April is ending, the sun has moved into the bull. In February, before February ended, the sun was in Pisces, and the sun was only in the Ram at one conjunction, only one. And this son of a priesthood is telling us all this timestamp that when I got on the program and saw, I was like, now you know why I'm calling it a timestamp. You can't fudge this and say, oh, I saw barley the month earlier, we're going to hold it a month earlier. No. And so based on a reckoning that he gave, everyone, the priests are declaring on the 16th, they're waving the barley. And by the way, I wanted to show, Sonia will like this. We're going to back up to when the moon was in the barley on the 14th. That's the 10th day of Nisan, 10th day of the first month when Yeshua is coming in to Jerusalem. Right next to the King Star. Here comes the lion. Here comes the lion of the tribe of Judah.
Lion of Judah coming right into Jerusalem.
Just a coincidence, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So just to explain, to make sure that everyone gets that. So of course, the 10th day is when the lamb is selected for sacrifice. And of course, the lamb. Oh my word. That's just craziness. So the king, the lamb was selected. The king, it was in the King Star. So yeah, the significance, mind is completely blown.
So now I'm going to go here to the 14th, 15th, 16th. On the 16th day of the first month, when they're waving the barley, the moon is in the scales. And this would have been Resurrection Day when Yeshua is down there telling those who are down in prison, I now got the keys. There's a new judge in charge. And now I've made the price that was deficient. I have now made it balanced by my blood. And so
Like
this
I
is,
always say, sorry, boys, that was the plan all along.
yes. And then if we advance it forward, you'll find that on the 50th day, the moon is in the King Star, just like it always is, going by the 16th instead of the first Sunday after Passover, which flip-flops every year. And I see Pamela has her hand up. Go ahead, Pamela.
Last week, I asked the question and I didn't realize till later I said it wrong. I asked, so how is the what do you call it? The beginning of unleavened always on the 15th. What I meant was, how is it that first fruits is always on the 16th? Like what you just said.
Yeah, and they're cutting the barley from what I've been reading in the first century literature from the Talmud, Mishnah, Josephus, and Philo. They're actually cutting it after the sun has set on when the 15th is ending, when the first day of unleavened bread is ending, and it has become dark. They're cutting the barley that evening, and I guess the waving is beginning. So it's very interesting. So, and that's the beginning of the first day. So remember, when the 15th is ended, because that's the first day of unleavened bread, when it ends, now we're at the first day of the week, the Omer week. So when the New Testament says that Yeshua rose on the first day, he did, but not the regular week, the first day of the Omer week. So hopefully that makes sense.
So first fruits is always on the 16th, as opposed to always on Yom Rishon following Passover.
Yeah, so you have the Passover on the 14th. As the 14th ends and the 15th begins, you've got unleavened bread. As unleavened bread is ending, you're moving now into the 16th, and it's time now to do the barley thing. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. And as you read from the Babylonian Talmud, they're clearly saying, and they were actually using the cutting of the barley as an example, which I was so astounded with, that it doesn't have to be the whole day. It could be a part of the day, and it's included as a whole day in the counting. So hopefully that sheds some light on, and for me, I'll just speak from my own mind. By seeing this, we can clearly see that Josephus is saying there was no, second guesswork or whatever. They were clearly going by the first new moon after the equinox, and which puts the sun where it's supposed to be. The sun has crossed the equator. Everything is now responding, and everything falls into order. You got the sun does its job, the moon does its job, and the constellations, which is Virgo and all of the ones, and the seed and the barley, they're doing their job, and everything is coming into harmony. And it's really, as Sonia says, it's mind blowing how incredible it is. And when I saw this timestamp, I'm like, I can't wait to see what I see on the program. When I saw what you guys just saw, I was like, oh my goodness, you've got to be kidding. This is crazy. Summer, go ahead.
So I'm still curious. Was that you were reading from Josephus, I think?
Yeah.
How did he know how to spot the sun in which?
Oh, I'm going to show you that. Okay, I'm sorry. I told you I was going to show you that. So let me show you.
Okay, thank you.
I can tell you, but it's better if you see it. Okay. So the green line is the ecliptic that the moon and the sun and the other planets move on, right? Mm-hmm. But there's another line that I have here. Maybe I didn't put it up. Let me put it up for you. All right, do you see this white line? This white line is the horizon, okay? Now, you know it's the horizon because I can show the horizon, and you'll see the horizon appear and block out the rest of the constellations. But I don't want to do that. I want you to see what's going on. But just know that this white line represents the horizon, and you can see letters here: northwest, north, northeast right here, and you have east right here. And this is where you're going to have the rising coming up. All right, so I'm going to back it up, in the time of the day. All right. So I'm going to put the horizon there just for the fun of it. Now you can't see the sun, can you? Right? The sun is blocked by the
This
horizon.
morning time?
Yeah, it's 4:19 in the morning in Jerusalem,
Okay,
up here in the top left.
okay.
So we're looking in the east. What constellation is coming up into the sky?
The Ram.
Well, the Ram and
Oh,
the Pisces came up ahead of it. Okay, you see that it's Pisces coming up.
oh, okay.
Question.
So well, let me finish. So if they don't see the sun, if the sun hasn't risen in Pisces, and the sun comes up now, which blocks Aries, they know that the constellation after Pisces is Aries. So they know that the sun is in Aries. Now, to confirm that, what they'll do is they'll follow the sun. Hold on. They'll follow the sun into the setting. And just before the sun sets, because you can't see any stars, when the sun sets, they see the bull. So on sunrise, they saw the Pisces. Sunset, they saw the bull. What's in between them? Aries. That's where the sun is. And that's how they know where the sun is each day and each month based on what rose before the sun rose and what was visible after the sun set.
Okay. Let me make sure I got this right. All the stars that make the constellations are fixed in this pattern.
Yes.
And all the planets and the sun and the moon that move around them. So they're like a map.
Like a clock.
For about 23,000 years, Summer.
So they just
They
memorized.
stay in that pattern. They stay in that specific pattern 23,000 years as best as scientists can determine.
Okay. So the first century people would have just memorized their positions since they never
Yes.
moved. Okay. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah. They knew where they were. And then you could tell which constellation the sun is in by what you saw before it rose and what you see after it set. You knew that the sun was obscuring the one that you're not seeing. And so it's made it real easy for them. Does that help?
Yeah. I don't know anything about the sky, admittedly. I mean, I've been to a planetarium when I was a kid.
Okay.
But so I thought everything up there moved all the time.
Well, it's to us, it's moving, but the sun and the moon and the planets are all moving through them. So you got the movement of the constellations, but then you got the planets and the sun are all moving through that as well.
Okay,
So,
thank
all right, well, that's the big thing that I wanted to show you because it really nails down what was going on first century, how they declared it, and it couldn't have been any other month than what they're telling us because everyone from 11 nations show up for Shavuot in Acts chapter 2 in agreement with what Josephus is telling us. All right, I'm turning it back to you, Pamela.
He's a hard act to follow, isn't he? Thank you so much for coming and sharing that. Like Sonia says, mind-blowing, especially after 14 years of doing a different way. And I'll tell you, I went out last night or the night before, we had a clear sky, and Orion's the one constellation I can pick out. And when I found that, then I got the planisphere, and I located it and pointed it in the right direction. But by then I was too cold to stand out there and see if I could find any others. So I came back in. I chickened out. Maybe next month. Okay. Does anybody have any questions before we go further?
Yeah, I do.
Go on.
So, Mark, when you were talking about to go outside in the morning to check for the moon, is it? To
Yes.
see whether we, yeah, to see whether you can see the crescent or not. So,
Yes.
so when we're looking, so we're looking east or west. I'm
So
turned
this,
around.
this will make it easy for you. So I, at one point, followed the sliver in the west. And
Uh-huh.
so if you're familiar with that, instead of doing that in the west, you're going to do the same thing in the east.
Okay.
Because, and instead of the evening, you're going to do it in the morning. You'll see the exact same sliver, same height from the horizon in the east that was being seen from the west in the evening.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So otherwise, just do it in the morning rather than in the evening.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
How early in the morning do you have to look for that before the sun drowns it out?
Well, just like in the west, you're talking about
30 minutes, 40 minutes?
yeah, about 40 minutes before the sun pops up.
Okay. All right. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. And I would recommend everybody get this, get one of the star programs because this is a really good plan. I mean, you can see everything. And by the way, right now, if you go out and look, really beautiful, you've got Venus, the moon, Jupiter, and Mars all up. And you can see them just really beautiful. And you can actually, if you start with Mars, you can draw an imaginary line straight through them just as after the sun sets, straight from Mars through Jupiter, through the moon and through Venus, and then connect it to the horizon where you saw the sunset. And you can see that arc of that green line. I mean, you can see that, all right, that's the line they're all moving on.
So what's the name of the app that you were talking about?
Star Walk.
Oh, Star Walk or what?
STARWALK.
Oh, Walk.
I'll just say pay for the version, whatever the cheap version is, because I tried to do the free one, and every time you touch your screen, an ad will pop up and the whole thing freezes.
Is that
Okay.
on Android as well?
Yeah. Yeah. There's other ones that are free, and I can't remember because I've had this so long. I really can't remember if I paid for it or not. But there are free ones, and Stellarium is free. I'm not sure if Stellarium on the phone will actually let you see each one, but this, you can hold your phone up and you can see everything. It's telling you what they are.
Well, I had one earlier last fall, but when I tried to get out of it, it wouldn't let me close it. And so I had I had to shut my phone completely off in order to get rid of it. So how do you deal with it?
So a lot of times you can't even see the thing that you've got to swipe from. So you've got to swipe from the bottom edge and just swipe up and it'll close it.
Okay, we'll
Yeah.
try that. Okay.
And one thing I will add to all of this is that through the year, the sun and the moon change where they come up and go down. If you notice in the summer, the sun kind of is way overhead. It's shining down. It's very hot. The shadows will be like right underneath where you're standing or where the tree is at the middle part of the day. In the winter, it's more to the south. It comes up lower across the horizon. In the summer, straight up. In the winter, more like sideways. So right, I can't remember. I know where it comes up and goes down right now. So it's further to the south, I guess. So when I see the sliver, either the one in the evening or the one in the morning, one in the morning for me seems to be kind of like east, northeast, I think is how you would say it. Not directly east. Anyway, that will change. Every month, it'll be in just a slightly different position until the sun comes up more in the south east for me. So and the moon's got to be kind of along with it. to get that light and come up as the sliver. So you won't always exactly be able to see it where it was before. Every month it's going to be just a little bit different. And Mark, I saw something pop up on chat that had your name from one of your people. You might want to, I didn't get to read
Okay.
it. Okay, there you go. Okay. Oh no, that was from Summer. Sorry about that. Okay. Any other questions? Well, one of the things I was going to start with tonight was to find out if anybody had any questions from what Brother Mark presented to us last week. So has anybody thought of anything during the week that you'd like to talk about, question?
I did, but I think I understand now, but let me double check my notes.
Good idea. Well, she's double checking. Anybody else?
Mark, Mark, you talked about the part of the day as counting as a whole day. So the 3 days and 3 nights didn't have to be 24-hour consecutive periods adding up to 72 hours. So
Correct.
according to that, does that mean that the crucifixion would have happened on a Thursday, maybe? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, so so if he is crucified on the 14th, and then which is a part of a day because obviously he dies at 3 p.m. So we got part of a day here. You got the whole entire day on the 15th, and then you have a partial part of a day on the 16th. And so, yeah, it's but starting the counting from that, everything kind of. Oh, I did have one other thing to share with you. I'm sorry. So because it can fluctuate, and I'd have to go back and look at, again, did he die in 32? Did he die in 30? Did he die in 31? Did he die in 33? Everybody has a different opinion. I picked 32. I don't know why I picked 32, but so I picked 32. But obviously, whatever day of the week it is, they're not going by, like in the New Testament. It's not when it says she arrived at the tomb on the first day of the week. I always assumed that was Sunday.
Yeah.
But I realize now that they were referring to another first day of a week. And they were referring to the first day of the Omer week, which totally makes sense, which is why I want to show you this other text here. And it is, let's see. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Okay. So this is Leviticus 23. I have the NASB on the left, the English Septuagint next to it, the LXX next to that. I've got the Hebrew next to that, and the far right is the Targum. And so you see here it says in verse 11, he shall wave the sheaf before Yahweh for you to be accepted on the day after the Sabbath. The priest shall wave it. The Septuagint says they will wave it on the day after the first. See it right here, highlighted in blue? The day after the first. So what first are they referring to? They're referring to the first day of unleavened bread. So the day after the first day of unleavened bread is the first day of the Omer, which is the 16th. So they wave it the day after the first. And actually, I can't see it because I can now. If you look over here on the far right, what does the Targum say? It says after the festival day that they wave it. What's the festival day? Unleavened bread, the first day of unleavened bread. So then you go down to verse 15, and it says, from the day when you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, there should be 7 complete Sabbaths. In the Septuagint, it says 7 whole weeks. Okay? In the Targum, it says 7 weeks. But also above that, it says after the holiday, not a Shabbat. So the Targum is telling you you start after the holiday, which would be the 16th, and you begin 7 weeks. Well, I think what messed us all up when we were reading it from the Masoretic text, that somehow inserted Shabbat in here, and we were thinking 7 complete Shabbats from 7th day of the regular week to the 7th day of the regular week, which is why I always counted from Sunday, but that's not what I'm getting from all the other texts. The other texts are telling me it's weeks, not Shabbats, that are being counted, and it's the day after the holiday or the day after the first day, which would be unleavened bread. So hopefully that helps, a little bit of reading there. But again, I'm trying to harmonize what I'm seeing the first century historians saying with the texts in the Greek and the Targums, which the Targums are also 1st, 2nd, 3rd century. The Targums are predating the Masoretic text as well. And so they seem to, if you remove the Masoretic text out of the way, all the other ones seem to be harmonizing on the same thing. And harmonizing with what Josephus and Philo and the Talmud and Mishnah 1st century texts are also saying. So, yeah, very, very interesting.
So what you're saying is that Shavuot is not necessarily always going to be on a Sunday. It could be a different day of the week.
Correct.
Thank you. Julia?
Yeah, okay. I want to make sure that I understand what Mark just said. He's okay. The 14th, Yeshua was crucified, right? The 15th is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And you're saying that on the 16th is the counting of the Omer. Is that correct?
Yes, the counting of
Okay,
the
so-
Omer, and I'm saying that. Well, let me rephrase. I'm saying that what Josephus, Philo, the Septuagint, and the Masoretic texts are telling. I'm not Josephus, Philo, the Septuagint, the Targum, and
The Talmud.
the Talmud are all saying is it happened on the 16th.
Okay, so, but what happened to the Wave Street Day?
It's the 16th that
So
they're
it's the
waving the
16th.
barley. They're
Yeah,
Yeah, they're waving the barley.
okay, so you're waving the barley and then you start counting the
That-
7 weeks?
that day on the 16th.
Oh, okay.
Now, what I didn't share that maybe you missed on one of the other programs we did, which is what led me to uncovering this about the first day of the Omer, was all of the feasts. When you keep the feasts, all of them, the moon is in the same spot year after year. Like it's in the barley every year on Passover. But when I was counting the Omer, when I got to the 50th day, it would be in one spot one year, but the next year it would be in a different place. It wasn't in the same spot year to year. And that was the only feast that did that. I'm like, what in the world is going on here? And I was prompted in my spirit to go read Leviticus 23 in the Greek, which I hadn't ever done. And when I read it and I saw that it said, you shall you shall wave the sheaf after the first, I thought it was referring to after Sunday, wave it on Monday. And I was like, what is going on here? Monday, that's way out of the way. What's going on? And then it just hit me. It's like the Father was telling me, Mark, there are 3 first days of a week, the week of crucifixion. I never knew that. I never, even though I know that there's a first day of unleavened bread and a first day of the Omer, I never put it together that there are 3 first days of a week going on in that 7-day period.
Wow.
So, my point is, which would they be focusing on? The first day of the regular week or the first day of a holy week? What's more important?
the Holy Week, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's our problem, you know, our Greek mindset. We think that because the first day of the week, you know, how the creation was set out, and then we count 7 days, like you said, you know, Shabbat on Saturday. And then, so apparently it's not. So from what you're sharing, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like could the Hillel calendar be correct in the way they have been keeping their count for the feast?
There's a problem with the Hillel in that
I agree.
every 5 years they do not wait until after the equinox. That's one problem. They will declare the beginning of the month, March 11th, March 12th, and it happens about every 5 years. It actually is coming up in 2032, I believe. And this is why they missed the red blood moons in 32, 33, and 34, because they are declaring it the first month in March for 11th. And so when Mark Biltz and Hagee and all these were looking for the next one, they didn't see it because they were looking at the Jewish calendar. And the calendar is a month early that year. It's not after the equinox. But if you wait till after the equinox, those red blood moons are right on feast dates the way they are, that 19 years apart on the Metonic cycle from the ones that happened in 14 and 15. Right on the money. And
Okay.
so, and let me say this too, this is hard for me too. I mean, I had to wrestle with some of this very hard, that if Josephus, a son of a priest, is telling me that they waved the sheaf on the 16th, and everyone around the whole, you know, the 11 nations are coming on Acts 2 based on that reckoning, then I had to kind of say, wait a minute, maybe I'm not getting something right. Maybe I need to kind of refigure here. And so that's part of what helped me kind of say, okay, well, I'm getting a real clear sign of what was going on in the first century. And this is what Yeshua was doing. This is what the apostles were doing. And let's say this, the Holy Spirit showed up on a holy day.
Yeah, and that has been my struggle for a long time. Because I remember my dad used to talk about the conjunction, but I couldn't remember the specific. But one thing he always did, when he planted potatoes, he knew when to plant them, according to the moon and the sun, the moon, you know. And I thought, oh, well, okay, you know, just being a kid, I thought, what's the big deal? You know? But now that you are sharing this, something I'm starting to remember, and some of the things that I have heard growing up. And so, and I'm struggling, you know, I admit I'm struggling too. And so this is, I think I'm getting there to understand what you're saying. And I'm sure everybody out there too, you know, because we've been doing this for so long a different way.
Yeah.
And to have this Hebraic mindset, because I've always questioned what was Yeshua doing? You know, what was he doing? You know, and so that's what I want to follow. I want to follow what Yeshua was doing.
Amen.
You know, I want to make sure that and so I've been, you know, asking him to show me something.
Amen.
And so I think this is timely for a lot of us.
And I'm hoping, my hope is that some of this that we're seeing from the first century text-wise will help bring a closer, more uniform for whoever wants to see and look and participate. So I'm hoping that's what will happen.
Thank you, Mark, so much.
Because it certainly isn't about me being right, because I'm the first one to say, if I'm wrong, I only want to do what the truth is and what, like you said, what Yeshua is doing. I want to be on board with that. And whatever that is, sign me up. You know, that's where I want to be.
Amen. Well, we've got questions from Sonia, then Summer, then Marilyn. So Sonia, why don't you go?
Thanks, Pamela. Brother Mark, I was tracking with everything except I've got stuck on one thing. So you're saying the partial days, which I can accept, the partial parts of a day can be counted as a full day or as a day in Hebrew, and I accept that. But remember when Yeshua said that he would spend 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth, just like the sign of the prophet Jonah. If he rises on the 16th, though, so if we even, I always write these things out, so just to make sure I'm not missing anything. And I get, so if he died on the 14th, then we've got a day, or a part of a day, but a day. Then on the 15th, you've got a night and day. But then on the 16th, you need a night and day to get the day part to have 3 days. And then you need a 17th night to have part of a night. Otherwise, you've only got 2 days and a part of, or hang on, even if you rose on the day, you're still missing a night. There's a night missing at least.
Yeah.
Even if you rose on the 16th and the day, you could have 3 days, but you still only got 2 nights.
Right. And so remember, we talked about if you were to take his, so pick a day, let's say I'm writing this down so I have it in my head.
I wrote it in front of me. I've got the 14th with day above it because that's when he died. So we'll take that day. And then the night belongs to the 15th. So that's night and day on the 15th when he was in the heart of the earth. And then on the 16th, it starts on the 16th, obviously starts with the night because going in, and then the day. So then he would rise even in the morning, that's a day. But then you still only got 2 nights there. There's a night missing.
Yeah. And so remember, you don't have to have a night and a day to be counted as what they would say 3 nights and 3 days. For example, if we were to take 3 24-hour periods into count, then Yeshua would have to wait and resurrect after the 3 24 hours, which would literally be a 4th day. But he's not. It's it's the whole 3 day. And the same thing comes into play let me pull this up for you. The same thing comes into play on, if you remember me reading this before, let's see. All of this is vital background for us to understand what Yeshua says in Matthew 12:40. For just as Jonah was in the 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. So if we were to understand this literally as English speakers, then Yeshua would not have been raised on the 3rd day, but the 4th day after the supposedly 72-hour time period had elapsed. Just as we saw with Esther, after 3 days simply meant on the 3rd day. Because as you see here, in Esther's time, let's see here. In the book of Esther, after 3 days can mean on the 3rd day. As preparation for her appearance before the king, Esther asked her fellow Jews not to eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. That's chapter 4, verse 16. On the surface, this would suggest that after this 3 day period, on the 4th day, she would go to the king, but no, she goes on the 3rd day and put her royal robes on and enter the king's presence. So in other words, the point being here is, as it says in the Talmud, it doesn't have to be all of that 24-hour period. If there's a partial amount, even if it's just 4 hours of that 24-hour period, they include it as the whole. So that's just how I know it's for us, it's maybe seemed crazy, but in 1st century, this was the way they reckoned the time based on what I'm seeing in text and matching it against other places in scripture where we have that 3 day thing.
I mean, I would agree with the partial, but and that's fine, but it just doesn't make sense to me when he did mention 3 days and 3 nights. I mean, even if it was a partial night on the 17th, which would be just after the 16th, which would be the sun after the sunset, then that would be 3 days and 3 nights. But obviously they have to do it in the day, in the beginning, like it's morning, isn't it? So it's still only, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me that he would have said 3 days and 3 nights.
Yeah. And it's something we've got to hit our mind about. But here's the thing is, if you go from the 14th and you count from the 16th, you end up in the King Star every time. So I wanted to share this also with you. So I used to think, let's say Yeshua dies on a Wednesday. Okay? Dies on a Wednesday. You got Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I used to say, well, he rose on Sunday somewhere in the night, whether it was just after Saturday, the first day or the seventh day ended, and he rose. My question is, this is what I always didn't understand, but now I do understand. Why did Mary wait until Sunday, the first day of the week? Why didn't she come on Friday? So in other words, if he died on Wednesday, she can't come on Thursday because it's Shabbat. But Friday, there's nothing about Friday except being called a preparation day for Shabbat that would have kept her from coming to see the tomb. Why wait another day and a half or a day and a quarter, whatever you want to call it? However, if he dies on the Wednesday and Thursday is the first day of unleavened bread, the first opportunity she has to come see is Friday, the first day of the Omer, which would make sense, which is the first day of the week. That's the first. I mean, if you're wanting to see if the master's okay, wouldn't you come at the very first opportune time you could when it wasn't a holy day?
I totally agree. That didn't make sense to me either.
Yeah.
But this also doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I understand the partial days. I understand the three, like you can have partial days. What doesn't make sense to me. So and I understand, like, I guess a night, like a partial night would be included as well. What I don't understand is that he did say 3 days and 3 nights. So I don't understand why he would say 3 days and 3 nights, even if it was a partial night, but that would still run us into the 17th, which also doesn't make sense. So I don't know.
Perhaps it's because the people of the day understood, like the Talmud is telling us, they understood that could be any part of those 3 days. Maybe that their mental understanding was that, well, I get it. I mean, he could literally he could literally resurrect 2 hours into the third day.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I understand the partials, and that part I don't have a problem with, because you can count the 14th day because it's you know, the end of the 14th day, and so that counts as a day. And I understand 15th obviously is pretty easy. The 16th, I mean, obviously you start at the night and go into the day, and if you resurrected in the beginning of the day, that's like 2 hours or even, you know, a couple of hours into the day, that counts as the day. So that's fine. And so you get 3 days. I just don't get the 3 nights. Why did he need to say 3 days and 3 nights? It just doesn't make sense to me. I think I'm going to find this one a difficult one. Anyway, but thanks for the explanation. I just
Yes.
have to think about it.
Hey, Summer, you're up.
This doesn't directly tie to the conjunction and calendars, but it ties to I guess to the whole year. I've had this sitting as a question. I just haven't brought it up yet the last couple of meetings. But in Exodus 34:22, it says, "Thou shalt observe the feasts of weeks of the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end. And so I was a little lost and confused how the year could end. When what do we call all those months in between fall and spring?
So that word, I'm pretty sure, is Tekufa, which means turn of the year. And so Cyrus can, if I'm wrong, he can correct me, but I'm pretty sure the word is Tekufa. And it means the turn of the year from summer to winter or winter to summer, which is what we saw Josephus or Philo, one of them was saying the same thing. After the year has turned or gone from summer to winter, we celebrate the booths. And so that's what that means.
Okay. All right. That makes better sense now. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for waiting, Marilyn. It's your turn.
My question was the same one that Sonia had, and I guess we'll just have to struggle it.
Isn't it nice that we've got a couple of months to work on this before we're coming into that season? Summer, thank you again for suggesting we get started on this now, because we're going to need every minute we can get, right?
Yeah, I mean, I do think a lot of us are going to need to kind of sit and chat this out a few times and get some hand holding until it becomes more familiar to us. But just having the information and feeling the conviction to move forward in this direction feels really good.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when was the beginning of this month? I forgot to write it down.
Summer, I just wanted to answer your question. So it is specific. The 3 days and 3 nights is from Matthew 12, verse 40. And Yeshua himself said it. So he said, as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. So that's why I'm stuck on the 3 days and 3 nights. It's I'm just not sure how to.
But what I was saying is that it doesn't say 3 full days and 3 full nights. I think that just might come from our modern day understanding of a 24-hour period.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But the problem is there's no third night at all. If you write it out, like that's what I did. I actually wrote it out. So there's 3 days, definitely, if you count the partial day on the 14th. Then you've got a full day on the 15th and a partial on the 16th of the days. You've got a full night on the 16th, 15th, and a full night on the 16th, but you've got no third night. So there's only 2 nights. That's why there's no partial night. I would even include that, but there's no night at all. So
I have to pull up a calendar, and I don't have one in front of me for that.
Oh, I just wrote it out. I just put, 14th with a D above it, and then 15th with ND for night and day, 16th with ND, night and day, and then 17th with an N, because that's where it would end if it was 3 nights. But anyway, I'll have to try and work this one out.
Sonia, are you counting the night of the 14th?
Yeah, because the end of the 14th is actually the 15th. We start our day in the evening. So the partial day.
That's a night and a day.
So it goes day on the 14th. So that's the afternoon. So that's day. Then the night, which is the 15th. That's the night of the 15th, which is, remember, we're working backwards. So it's night, which would in English calendar would be actually the 15th would actually be the 14th night. It's the 15th. So does that make sense? So it's the night is the beginning of the day, or beginning of, the day. Then the day part of the 15th. And if you write it out, if you sit there and actually just put the day, night above the 14th, 15th, and 16th, you'll see what I'm saying is true. So you actually get a partial day on the 14th, a full night and day on the 15th, a full night on the 16th, a partial day on the 16th for the morning of the 16th. And then there's no third night.
And
I'm not trying to make difficulties. I'm just
No,
telling
hey, that's why we talk it out. I appreciate what you're saying. And so, this was hard for me when I first saw it. And I'm digging in to try to make sense of it. That's why I come up with these other places about the 3 days and 3 nights. But what really did it for me was when Josephus is saying that they're waving the sheaf on the 16th. I mean, I don't know how you want to count it, but from the 14th to the 16th. And he actually tells you what part of and I may have I said just after the 15th end of the 16th began. It might have been that next morning. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was clearly before sunrise on the 16th, and which matches what the Gospels are saying. And but then you have, again, he's saying on the 16th, everyone in the first century is saying the 16th, and you've got everybody showing up on Shavuot on that day. The moon is in the spot it apparently seems to be. So all of that is lining up. The only thing that's not lining up is what we're understanding to be 3 days and 3 nights. And it's a brain twister for sure.
Yeah, that's exactly right. As I said, my brain is not able to, at the moment, comprehend that. I understand the partial days and all that. And if he hadn't been so specific, I probably would have said, oh yeah, because obviously that's 3 just days. If you've got the 14th, 15th, and 16th, obviously in Jewish mind, that would be 3 days. You don't need to go for an extra day. Or the 72-hour period. You don't need that. I understand that perfectly. What I don't understand is that Yeshua himself said 3 days and 3 nights. I wish he hadn't said that, because now it's like,
Sonia, Julia put something in the chat. She says possibly a Hebrew idiom for the 3 days and 3 nights. So let's spend this week seeing if we can find that out, because he used a number of idioms. I think the George Lambsa's book, Idioms in the Bible Explained. And while you all chat, I'm going to go through here. I don't remember seeing that one before, but just in case, we'll see if that could maybe solve this discrepancy for us. How does that sound?
that would be lovely.
Okay, Cyrus, you're next.
Okay, I just want to remind everybody that, this began, I think, 2 years ago. It was either the second to last or the last meeting we had with Brother Joe. And I was asking Brother Mark about the timing, primarily the equinoxes, and making the comment, it has to be something that's visible around the world, because Israel is in every nation of the world. So is the barley in Israel visible around the world? Well, right now, yes, because we have Zoom and other programs that facilitate that. To remind everybody, the Jews in first century did not. But for Vaughn and I, this has been an ongoing discussion, revelation, investigation, because there has to be something there. Okay? Now, please keep in mind that my formal entry into Torah began in the 1980s. And so there's a lot of things that I believe that came with that introduction. So you stop and look at it, let's say it was I think it was more like 1980. So that's 45 years. Some of this stuff I've been doing, keeping, observing, and, for 45 years. But I look at it this way. The truth outweighs the number of years I've been doing it wrong. Okay? If I can see truth And all of a sudden, that truth is like poof, it goes off. Yah has a better idea in the back of my mind, then I have to embrace it. And this has been something that, like I said, for Vaughn and I, we've been talking ever since that it was either the last or second to last interview we did with Brother Joe, because that's when I was trying to get more information out of Brother Mark without stepping on toes with Brother Joe. And, you know, I'm trying to be respectful, okay? I really am, because I have to respect his point of view. You got to understand the idea of midrash. The midrash, Mark has his say. And I don't jump up and down and, you know, make a bunch of noise and everything because what he says disagrees with what I say. I let him say everything he has to say. And then when my term comes, I say everything I want to say. It's being respectful of Mark's point of view, Mark's time, and his experience. Okay. And then when somebody comes along and just cuts Mark off and says, no, that's not the way to do it. You got to do it this. That's not a midrash. That's an argument. Okay. And so Lauren and I have been going over this, talking about this, especially these last few weeks after our last study that we did with Brother Mark, not last week's, but the one before that, is because everything was clicking into place. Okay. Everything. I mean, it was click, 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 click. Everything was lining up. Yeah, I see face it, a lot of what I have taught you has been nullified, but what we've learned over the last few weeks. Okay, because of a better understanding of what the words of the first century meant. And in defense of Josephus, he was not just the son of a priest, he was a priest, he was a Pharisee. He tried the Sadducees, he tried the Essenes, and then he tried the Pharisee, and he felt better as a Pharisee than the other two. So at the age of 19, he became a Pharisee. Okay? So he was remember, the Pharisees were the rulers of the Yahudim, according to the book of John. Okay? The Yahudim were the religious leaders of Jerusalem. So this is who, and you got to remember, I can't remember his age at the time that he was captured by the Romans, but he was young enough that he would not have seen Yeshua, but he would have heard of his disciples. And you'll see, if you go and check his testimony, he says, and Yeshua of Nazareth was the Messiah. He says it very point blank. It's like, don't y'all know that? So if Yeshua was teaching something that the Pharisees did not believe me, you would have heard about it in all four Gospels. There would have been an uproar. I mean, they would have stoned him long before they put him on the cross rather than stoning him after they put him on. So we have to understand that we have to put it in the context of the first century AD. I think Mark did a great job of that by showing us the Mishnah. And like I said, I put more credence with Josephus than I do Philo, but Philo is still a good source, okay? It's just that I trust Josephus more.
Especially if they're both saying the same thing.
Yeah, yes. When they say the same thing, there you go. Two first century scholars, and they say the same thing.
So Brother Cyrus, so when you're saying the whole world has to see it, so what you're telling us today is that what Josephus said is all the diaspora could see that the sun was in Aries.
That's correct. Absolutely. That I don't know, like I was telling Vaughn, I've read Josephus since I was 12, 13 years old. But I wasn't in Torah when I was 12 and 13 years old. Okay. So it meant nothing to me. And I still, Vaughn, I was telling Vaughn, I read Torah, Josephus, she said, yeah, every day. But, and I encourage you, please, please, if you think Mark's making it up, if you think I'm making it up, get Josephus down and read it. Like I said, he was a member of the Sanhedrin. And the Romans even called him a prophet because of his uncanny ability to predict the days that things would happen, which were usually on feast days. Okay. So this is another aspect of Josephus we have to consider. Do I understand all of it? No, definitely not. Okay. But I'm dumb enough to believe what we have here is a preponderance of evidence. Okay. Do we have, is it perfect? No, but we have a preponderance of evidence. Now let's examine that evidence so that we can, attenuate our life to Jehovah's cycles. And talking about the turn of the year, that's always been something that I have brought up over the years, is the turn of the year, but I didn't know it in relationship to the sighting of the moon. Like I said, I always went back to the olive harvest.
Or how do you
When
spell
is olive
Cyrus?
harvest? Yes. Oh, okay. Go back to the olive harvest. When can you have clean, clear oil to bring to the priest for Sukkot? I'm sorry, but you're not going to do it before September 15th plus 15 days, September 30th. That's going to be your earliest, opportunity. And even then, that's iffy. So please consider, go back. I'm going to listen to this thing over and over. I can tell you, there's too much information here to absorb all at once. But I'm ready and willing to accept the fact that I now have proof that I've been looking for. Israel, throughout the entire world, can now see the barley in the heavens at the proper time. Okay. And to me, that's what it's all about. That was the sign that I was looking for, was that all of Israel around the world. Okay. We've got Sonia in Australia. I don't know where anybody else is right now, but on a regular Shabbat, we have Africa, Great Britain,
Canada,
lots of Canada, and even some crazy ones here in Texas. So how can we all see the same thing at the same time? Because it's in the heavens. It's written in the heavens. And that's what I've been looking for, is where can everybody see it? Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Don't be sorry. We need that. Mark, you had your hand up. Did you have more to say?
no, I'm good now.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, let me answer brief, put a question in the chat about the first day of the month. And I just covered my calendar up. If you go to livingmessiah.com, they have a calendar on there. And it shows, oh boy, my iPad's attempting to reconnect. I think it was the 30th of January Was that right, Mark? That was the first day of this month?
I don't know. What I had here in the house, I mailed a bunch of y'all's calendars out. So I even mailed the one I had set here on my desk for myself. So I don't even have one in front of me.
Oh dear. Okay, so I don't know why my iPad is not connecting back to the calendar. Excuse me 1 second.
Hey, Brother Mark, does that mean that you don't have any more calendars?
No, I do. I have all of them I had brought a bunch from the Cajal over at the building, and I thought that I had brought enough, but I didn't. So I'm going to bring some more. I have everybody that's asked so far. I've got enough to mail everybody out, but that took everything I had in the house. So I'm going to bring some more when I get back over there this week, so I can get more mailed out.
Aren't
So,
you
so
thinking-
Brother Mark, Brother Mark, I must have misunderstood you last week. For some reason, I thought we could order it on your website. So I've been popping over to the website and not seeing where it could be ordered. Shall I just write to you with the quantity and?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. I will do that.
Good thing your wife told you to order 100.
Yes, I can't wait.
It's another proof text that I was wise in listening to what she says.
And wise man that can admit it. Thank you very much. Okay. Any other questions before we finish up with this about the baby and the 7 annual feast days? This is so awesome, y'all. Going once, going twice.
I will say one other thing is, now that I don't know why I didn't think before to type in constellations names into the program that I have. And so now I'm going to be hunting to see if I can find anything that would signify what constellation the sun was in during Shavuot. So we'll see if I come up with anything, but it's just opened up another window for me. I don't know why I didn't think that would be there, but yeah, of course they knew what those were, and they are in the text. I just, obviously Job mentions it, and I should have just realized to be putting in those constellation names to search for them.
Isn't this a wonderful journey, everybody? And thank you for sharing with us. Anytime you have new information you want to share, please let us know, or just pop on. You don't have to say ahead of time.
Yeah.
Every once in a while we have somebody presenting something special, but
I knew this was a big deal because of like Brother Cyrus is saying, everyone can see it, and it nailed it down to one 30-day period in the year. I mean, you can't fudge it and say, oh, well, it's the month earlier like we have going on today. No, it was only 1 month, and they were declaring it after the equinox, and they were going by the conjunction. It was so obvious, and it's like it was a piece that I needed to really. I don't know. It was very heavy, very weighty, and I'm glad the Father showed it.
hey, Sonia.
Yeah, back in the chat, Sarah and Stefan suggested that we do another meeting, so I'll just leave that in your hands. They suggested that this information should be done as a, put together as a, Cycles Super
Webinar.
There you go. You know what I mean? Yes. It's up to you.
Yes, but that would be great. Okay, Bree, it's your turn.
Yeah, it's I've been listening in all on stuff, and what keeps coming up in my head is something called Occam's razor. Basically, the simplest answer to a question is usually the correct one, is easy to explain, whereas usually has to be explained multiple angles, multiple directions, and multiple times. So I'm a very simple man. I'm a very simple-minded individual. And the explanation of something that you can physically see in the heavens, which has not only a pattern, but a history of a pattern, is really, really difficult to try and convince a person like me. No, it's much more complex than that. But hold on a second. I can see it. You can see it. Did they send a rocket ship up there and drag a planet out of direction or something like that? Did somebody send some AI software into the sky that changed where the constellations are? Okay. It just makes total sense to me. And usually, as is usual with almost anything I've ever learned, especially in the military, when there was a description or discussion that said, this is safer, this is easier, this is going to save time, lives, and money, the answer was often responded with, that's not how we did it in the past. That's not how we're going to do it now. And we don't plan on doing that again in the future. And if you had any logic left in your brain after enlistment, you'd kind of look at each other with your mouth just gaping, going, really? I mean, we just told them it's going to save an awful lot of things, and they refuse it because that's the way it's always been. That's the way it'll always be. So when it comes to the understanding of Yeshua, the understanding of the Torah, the understanding, what I think is really great is when, in fact, you can put it in context, like Brother Mark was doing, about making it clear that people of this era, of this particular time frame, of this particular cultural thinking, were expressing to each other simple concepts, in their opinion, probably simple concepts that were just, I'm just writing about what took place last Friday, and it was kind of interesting what took place last Friday. And it's interesting how the Friday before that, it did the same thing. And 500 Fridays before that, it did the same thing. Isn't this really kind of cool? So the less complexity, I mean, the cosmos is hard to comprehend because of our limited brains and just knowledge and understanding. But I keep coming back to the same thing where I was talking with Hugo and with Kurt about the fact that I'm thinking about trying to design a three-dimensional model, and I'm sure somebody's done it in the past, but it would basically be nothing more than a round, what do you call it again? A turntable, like a record player, and each of the stars in the constellation are a punch out on a sheet of metal. And as the piece of metal rotates, it would pluck different musical times, like on a fork. And so you would end up hearing the music of the cosmos as it would rotate at the speed which would take it around in one complete year's rotation. And more important than anything else I've found, I'm not instrumentally musical. I can't play a musical instrument. But if anything is going to trigger my memory and my thought, the most important thing is usually music. And so I'm thinking that the people who probably studied with Daniel in the place of Babylon before they were turned loose, Ezra was turned loose to go ahead and go back and build the temple. It's my understanding, or at least belief, that the guys that went to Egypt, not to Bethlehem, but to Egypt, and saw the child in front of the door that brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh, would have been really well-to-do, if not super rich, scholars that studied the heavens under Daniel and whatever he was doing with his university there. And so that's why they understood as much as they did. If they were just kings, kings would have been listening to soothsayers and diviners and people like that. And usually it was the court jester was the whole smartest person in the entire court because of the fact he could get away with anything and he could direct a king. So my point being, when you say things in simplest form, and you can, even a person who doesn't understand exactly what each of the constellations are called, or exactly how to see them in the sky for themselves until they get the chance to, it's understandable. So I think and I pray and thank Jehovah for the simplicity of the cosmos. Enough.
Lee, you kind of scared me there. I think Brother Mark and I got a little nervous when you mentioned anybody's razor.
Yeah, I haven't seen
Laugh.
haven't placed a razor to my face in about 10 years either.
It's been 1980 when I got out of the military. That was my last shave.
Wow. That's awesome. Okay. Are you done, Lee, or did you have more to say? Your hand's still up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me lower my hand. It's just, no, I was just talking about, it was Occam's razor and I had to rethink it for myself. So I'm lower to.
Okay, we'll just smack you next time. How's that sound? And y'all, I hope you enjoy what I'm gonna tell you about right now because it kind of goes along with what we're, oh, wait a minute. Sorry. With what we've been talking about with honoring and celebrating these feasts at the right time. I don't believe in coincidence. I know most of us here don't either. So I'm gonna read you some stuff from this book. It's written by Zola Levitt. He was the first person I studied under. This was written in 1979. Zola Levitt was a Messianic Jew, a Jewish person that was a Christian. And some of what he writes in here and in all of his other writings are from a Christian perspective. Like he was still talking about the rapture and a few other things. So if you hear something along those lines, just remember it's quite old, but the gist of this is still going to apply. So in the first part of this, see, it's not very big, and you can get these from Zola Levitt, was it .com? Zola Levitt. No, it's levitt.com, Levitt.com for $4. I imagine there's shipping. And it's $14 for the same thing on Amazon. Anyway, like I said, this is mostly from a Christian perspective. So except for this section about the development of a baby, I wouldn't spend $14 on it. Okay, anyway, Zola Levitt finishes his teaching about Jehovah's 7 annual feasts and festivals. And then he gets into the second section titled, Unto Us a Child is Born. Exciting already, right? And I can't say it any better than he does, so I'm just going to read some of his words. A most intriguing and almost startling application of the system of the 7 feasts came my way recently during some research for a book. Perhaps this whimsical little section will serve as an example of how God's formulas pervade this earthly human life. I'm skipping some stuff. To that end, I contacted Dr. Margaret Matheson, a Bible reading friend and a very good obstetrician who has delivered over 10,000 babies. I don't even want to think about that. I questioned Margaret about pregnancy in general, how it is calculated, and how the baby develops within the mother. Skipping. It was really Margaret's first statement that turned me on to the whole system I'm about to disclose. I asked Margaret to tell me in some detail just how the baby is made and how it grows, and she began with the statement, on the 14th day of the first month, the egg appears. Are y'all listening? I couldn't help hearing that familiar ring of Leviticus 23:5. In the 14th day of the first month, God's original, I'm skipping some. I was fascinated that the 14th day of a pregnancy does the same thing as the 14th day of God's festival year. It brings the chance of new life. I was already thinking in my mind that the baby must develop along the schedule of the 7 feasts, but I concealed my excitement from Margaret. I didn't want to encourage her to slant the facts in any way, just to prove a biblical point. I questioned her carefully, keeping in mind that the next feast, unleavened bread, must occur the very next night, the 15th day of the first month, according to Leviticus 23:6. I asked Margaret how soon fertilization of the mother's egg must occur if pregnancy is to happen. Her answer was very clear and very definite. Fertilization must occur within 24 hours or the egg will pass on. Now I was getting excited. Not only did the 2 momentous prenatal events occur on the right days, but they were also the appropriate events. The egg, of course, for Passover, with the idea of fertilization, the planting of the seed for unleavened bread, the burial of our Lord. His crucifixion on Passover gave each of us the chance for life everlasting. His burial in the earth prepared for each of us the glorious resurrection to come. I almost held my breath as I inquired about first fruits. I realized that this 3rd feast is not on a definite time cycle. It simply occurs, and this is what I thought until Brother Mark's discussion earlier. It simply occurs on the Sunday during the week of unleavened bread. It could be the day after, or it could be almost a week away. I asked Margaret cautiously what happened next in the birth process. Well, that's a little bit indeterminate, she said. The fertilized egg travels down the tube at its own speed toward the uterus. It may take anywhere from 2 to 6 days before it implants. I loved her word implants because it so suggested the festival of first fruits, the spring planting, and it was the correct technical term. I found out. The medical term is implantation. This marks the moment when the fertilized egg arrives safely in the uterus and begins its miraculous growth into a human being. Needless to say, Margaret and I were very soon occupied with a pile of obstetrical textbooks, embryonic charts, and of course, the scriptures in several translations. I appealed to her to help me track this thing down, but I still did not disclose to her just what I was after. I was only going to ask her about how our little fertilized egg would develop, without telling her that I fully expected a very exact schedule in accordance with the feast. It's probably not necessary for me to say that I was holding my breath by this time. After all, it was so beautiful so far. Surely God designed the conception of each of us in accordance with these first 3 majestic feasts, so appropriately fulfilled by our Lord. But would the system continue? The next one was the tough one. It seemed that things were happening fast on the pregnancy schedule. But the 7 feast schedule now called for that long wait until Pentecost. I asked Margaret cautiously what the next development would be with our implanted egg. Well, of course, we have a slowly developing embryo here for a long time, she said. It goes through stages, but there's really no dramatic change until it becomes an actual fetus. That's the next big event. You can see it all right here on the chart. And she turned her medical book toward me so I could see a page divided like a calendar showing the first few weeks of the embryonic development. I looked across the little pictures at what seemed like a little tadpole, which soon had flippers and then began to look like a little man from Mars, and so on, down to the very last picture on the page. There I saw a human baby, and beside that drawing, the very scriptural message, 50 days. Yeah, bumps anybody? And let me just point out, this was written in 79. They were probably still using that old version of the embryonic chart where they thought human embryos went through regressive, maybe Sonia can tell us. Anyway, they said you couldn't tell it was a human until it reached a certain stage. We now know.
There's a really good write-up on that in Creation Ministries, creation.com. And basically it was Haeckel's, wherever you say his name, his drawings, which made the whole, where it all looked like fish essentially. But yeah, there was disproven because they actually took photographs of the developments, and they're completely different.
Yes. Okay, so what I'm going to remember that as I read this next. I looked up at Margaret, trying to conceal my excitement, and said carefully, "Is the 50th day important?" "Well," said the obstetrician, "up until the 50th day, you wouldn't know if you were going to have a duck or a cocker spaniel. But at the 50th day of the embryo, it becomes a human fetus." Scriptural phrases were flying through my head. A new creature seemed to be the appropriate one for the momentous event of the change from this indiscriminate life form, the embryo, to what was essentially a human being. Indeed, on that day of Pentecost, those as yet unregenerate Israelites at the temple became truly new creatures. They became spiritual. They received life eternal. Caveat, redeemed, not saved eternally, not yet. They were not the same now as they were before. That's from 2 Corinthians 5:17. They would now go on to another life outside the confines of the fleshly bodies they were in the manner that that fetus would go on to another life outside the body of its mother. Margaret apprised me that every scheduled event in the birth of the baby varied somewhat with the particular case, just as the length of the entire pregnancy would vary from mother to mother. The medical book chart had measured its 50 days from fertilization rather than implantation, which, remember, was first fruits. But the variations among pregnancies would account for the difference. Substantially, after the 7th week following conception, this embryo, this life form, would become that one creature created in God's own image. I next asked Margaret about the first day of the 7th month. I had hoped that there were no big events through what would be the long summer on the schedule of the feast, and indeed there were none. It seemed that the fetus, once started on its growth into a human being ready to be born, progressed in a rather general way with nothing momentous happening. The baby, I now realized, had developed very early and was now only gaining size and strength. But of course, there were a few small perfections to be added by the hand of the Creator, and I was delighted to find that one of these coincided so exactly with the next feast. The perfection that arrived just at the beginning of the 7th month was the baby's hearing. Margaret's medical textbooks, including the definitive Williams Obstetrics, stated that the baby's hearing was now fully developed. At the first day of the 7th month, the baby could discriminate a sound for what it really was. For example, a trumpet was a trumpet. Just in time for the Lord to descend from heaven with a shout and with the sound of the trump of God, that baby could perceive the sounds. I was now out for blood, that is, the blood that would represent the 6th feast, the Day of Atonement. This was the outstanding day of blood sacrifice. Hang on a second, y'all. Sorry. This is just so awesome. This was the outstanding day of blood sacrifice, and I specified to Margaret that I wanted to know if there was any development just 10 days into the 7th month. I still was careful not to imply just what I was looking for. If Margaret had said, the elbows are finished, then I suppose my system would have been finished. But somehow I was very confident by now, and the obstetrician didn't let me down. Half quoting from her textbook and concentrating hard, Margaret stated that the important changes now indeed were in the blood. It was necessary for the fetal blood, which carried the mother's oxygen through the baby's system, to change in such a way that the baby could carry the oxygen that it itself would obtain upon birth. Technically, the hemoglobin of the blood would have to change from that of the fetus to that of a self-respirating and circulating human being. The fetus does not breathe, but rather depends on the oxygen obtained through the mother's blood circulation. Naturally, this system must be changed before birth, and that change occurred, according to Margaret's textbooks, in the 2nd week of the 7th month, and to be precise, on the 10th day. The blood acceptable rang through my mind. I have given you the blood for remission of sin. Leviticus 17:11 was God's statement. Indeed, each person of Israel had to present blood to the Lord through the high priest of Israel on the Day of Atonement. If that blood was acceptable, then there would be life. Likewise, in the fetus, when that blood was mature, there would be life. But, of course, the fetus is not ready to be born. There remains still another feast. And by this time, I was quite confident that Margaret would come up with the appropriate fulfillment. I asked for the 15th day of the 7th month, and she immediately recognized the date as the beginning of the safe delivery period. You see, that's when the lungs are developed, she said. And as long as they get their little lungs going, we can bring them along, even if they are born at that early stage. I'm afraid if they decide to come before those lungs are finished, then they have very little chance. But by the 15th day of the 7th month, a normal baby has 2 healthy lungs, and if born at that point, can take in its own air and live on it. The Feast of Tabernacles I pondered, but of course, the tabernacle is the house of the Spirit. The Spirit is the air in the Bible. Didn't God blow into Adam to make him live? And didn't Christ breathe the Holy Spirit upon his disciples? And even more so, in Ezekiel's dry bones vision, from Ezekiel 38, Ezekiel saw God make dead bones, sinews, and muscles come together into human beings, and then commanded the prophet, saying, Then he said unto me, Prophesy unto the wind, prophesy, Son of Man, and say to the wind, Thus saith the Lord God, Come from 4 winds, O breath, and breathe upon these slain, that they may live. Ezekiel 37:9. Tabernacles is the end of the road, the end of the feast, the end of God's plan, the beginning of the kingdom. The baby would live if born at Tabernacles. The believer will live once he enters the kingdom. And I'd just like to point out where he's talking about the breath and the wind. The word there in Hebrew is ruach, and it also means the spirit. Sorry for the sniffles.
Yeah,
I hope
awesome.
everybody else is just blown away by that.
Awesome.
Do we have any questions, any comments about what you've heard tonight or what you would like to hear in the future, anyone?
I do want to make one last statement before I go, and that is, since the moon or the sun is in Aries during the first month in Yeshua's day, the sun is only in Pisces on the first month in our day. And so just as it represented the ram who had come to shed his blood for the world. Now it's been about the fish and hunting for the fish in these days. So it's probably not by coincidence that the Almighty worked it out so that in these days up to his coming, we would be celebrating Passover when the sun is in the fish. Only that month. It's not in the fish the month before, not in the fish after, just like the one in Aries and Yeshua's day. It's only in the fish that month.
There's no coincidences in Yah's kingdom.
Which month was that? Which was that again?
For our Passover this year and every year, it's only in the fish during the first month of the year.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
But what about the ram?
It's in the ram, the second month for the second Passover.
Oh, I thought it was the first one. Okay, so I missed that.
So the one I showed you where the sun is in the ram, that was during Yeshua's day. But because of the precession of the equinoxes, the sun now is in the fish during the first month of the year. And only during that month. So in other words, we can learn the same thing from Yeshua's day, that he was saying that during Passover, the sun is in that constellation now. So now that it's moved into the next constellation, we can now confidently say that the sun is only in Pisces during Passover in this age. Remember, the ages change. And so since the age has changed, so has the location of the sun during Passover. And so now it can only be in Pisces in the first month, just like it was only in Aries the first month in Yeshua's day.
So what constellation was it in when Moshe was given the feasts? Do you know? Or could you, what constellation was the sun in the month of during when Moshe was given the feasts?
That would have been at Mount Sinai.
No, it doesn't have to work it out tonight, but I was just wondering if you could maybe work that one out, because I'm now curious, because obviously it wasn't then in the ram when Moshe was given.
Correct. Yeah, and so think about it's a 2,000 year period that it's in a constellation. So here we are 2,000 years later, it's moved from the ram to Pisces. So back up 2,000 years from Yeshua, and what's the constellation before the ram?
The bull.
That's right.
Woo!
But was it 2,000 years from Moshe to Yeshua? It was, wasn't it?
Pretty close.
Well, they sacrificed the bull, right?
Yeah, because remember that was when they came out of Egypt, it was all about bull worship.
Huh.
So,
That's
but the moon is still in the barley every season. That doesn't change when the ages change.
So you saw that in 32 AD on the 14th, the moon was in the barley. Which is mind blowing. I can't even figure that out. But on the 14th of today, the moon is in the barley still.
That is so weird. The sun changes where it's at, but the moon doesn't.
I can't understand that, because there is a difference in distance, but God has somehow worked that out over the millennia, because you would think it would be in a different spot, but you saw it in 32 AD, it was in the barley, and today it's in the barley on the 14th.
Wow.
Well, I guess the crazy thing about that is, when you think about it, that would have also been the only time of that age, I guess, that the sun would have been in the ram. So he couldn't have come before that or after that. So that's interesting.
You'll have me looking tonight, Sonia. You always give me something to look at. And I'll be studying some stuff.
Amazing like that. She and Summer always ask such great questions. And I'm going to read what Cyrus put in the chat, Jeremiah 16:16. Y'all will recognize this. See, I am sending for many fishermen, declares Jehovah, and they shall fish them. And after that, I shall send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain and every hill and out of the holes of the rocks. So we're
Is it coincidence we're in the fish? So no, it's not.
He
Amen.
said, I will make you fishers of men.
And he did.
And he did. Now you know why they built a golden calf.
Oh, so then what in 2,000 years will it be in the sun be in?
Say again.
Sorry.
We won't
In,
need
in,
the sun
in,
because
no, I know, but no, but we've got another 1,000 years. And then after that, oh, yeah, we won't need the sun, but maybe it'll change again. The sun in 1,000 years might not still be in the fish, maybe.
Yeah, so during the millennial reign,
Yeah.
the millennial reign, it's going to be in Aquarius.
what does that mean? I mean, I'm got that song now running through my head, The Age of Aquarius.
No, not that song.
Water
That's-
bear.
That was the first thing I thought of, Pam.
What can I say? I was born in the 50s.
So the mind blower is going to be when I look at Moses's day, is the moon still in the barley from when the sun is in the bull? That's going to be really amazing.
Oh, well, we're not supposed to bet, but can we like place bets?
oh my gosh, Aquarius, isn't that the water? The
Yes.
river?
The
Oh
water
my
bear.
gosh. That is crazy. I'm sorry. I'm just like, oh my gosh.
So during Passover, the sun will be in the pouring out.
Far out, Brussels sprout. Oh my goodness. That is crazy. Is anyone, I've literally got goosebumps and it's hot here. It's like, it's really hot and I've got goosebumps.
Yeah. Amen.
Oh my gosh.
Now, how many of you think astronomy is just dull and dry?
Shed a light on it for a few of us, for sure.
Well, like Cyrus, I'm going to need to watch this over and over again.
Now I
Okay.
wish I hadn't moved away from Phoenix so that I could go visit Brother Mark and he could show me all of his cool toys. Do you have a
Well, what would be nice is if some of you some year could come out here and celebrate Sukkot in the open skies of the deserts of Arizona.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah.
do you have
And
Awesome.
not a microscope, a telescope? Do you have a telescope too? Do you go look at them with that?
Well, we did. My daughter-in-law had a really, really nice $1,500 one, but she just sold it. But because of the program that I have, I can click on any telescope in the United States and view from there.
You can view other people's telescopes remotely?
Yes.
Oh my
If they're
gosh.
tied into the system, yes.
Wow. I've been living under a rock, you guys.
Welcome to my house.
Does that mean you can tune into the Parkes telescope?
What was that?
Does that mean you can tune into the Parkes telescope?
I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure I don't think Hubble, but I think the ones that are on the ground, there's a bunch that you can. I haven't gone to look at all of them, but there are many you can choose from.
The Parkes one is like the sister one of the Hubble one. It's in I forget, like Bathurst or somewhere out there, out west. We went out there one time.
Okay.
It's really big.
Okay.
That's why I thought, oh, maybe you could tune into that one. That'd be pretty cool.
My brain's just churning. Questions, comments?
Can you also please look at the sun when Adam was created, please?
I went and looked at a lot of those things that Brother Joe had given me dates based on his calendar. And so, yeah, I just have to go back. I wrote them down. I have to go back and look again. But yes, I can look. If we use those dates, I can go back and look. Absolutely.
Well, I think they're pretty close to the ones that you had because you, I remember going back that you had, oh gosh, it's coming out of my brain, but that thing about the eclipse, and it was like within a year of when Brother Joe had that date. Remember?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. You know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. It's just not coming out of my mouth very well.
Yeah. And I'd have to go back and look at the notes. I couldn't tell you from memory.
No. I've got the notes too. Okay. Awesome.
Okay. Well, if there's no further questions or discussion, maybe we should call it an evening so we can all chew on this and sleep on it. And who will read the blessing for us tonight? Thank you.
I will. I love to read the blessing. We'll do it in English. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to Aharon and his son, saying, This is how you bless the children of Israel. Say to them, Jehovah bless you and guard you. Jehovah make his face shine upon you and show favor to you. Jehovah lift up his face upon you and give you peace. Thus they shall put my name on the children of Israel, and I myself shall bless them. Amen.
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 Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Yes,
All
thank
for
you,
your
Mark.
time.
Thanks, Mark.
Everybody.
I'm sorry.
Lots of fun.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. I'm gonna-
Blessings.
Thanks, Brother